Hello, everybody. It's Graham Cope with another My Music. I hope you're all well and enjoying your day wherever you may be and at whatever time you're listening to this. It's always confusing because the world of the internet means you could be anywhere and at any time. So it's difficult to know what to say, but I hope you are enjoying it. I will be talking to the wonderful Kathryn Williams in a minute. But first, let's have this little video, which by now you've probably seen or heard a million times before, but do enjoy it. And do go and have a look at the website afterwards because, frankly, the musicians need your money.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
It's like all the best bits of Tiswas all over again, Kathryn. It's a wonderful little video that full of lovely people doing their thing. It's wonderful to see so many independent musicians on independent labels doing so well at the moment. Do you not think?
I do think.
Yeah. Tell me, how much has music changed since you first started writing and making music?
It's changed a massive amount. When I first started, I put music out on my own label, and no one was doing that at the time. There's probably me and Belle and Sebastian and a few punk people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I signed after the Mercury Music Prize nomination. I signed to a major label where there was big money, and I did 3 albums with them. And then went back onto my own label, and then for the last 7 or 8 albums I've been on one little independent, which is Bjork's, the label Bjork's on. So yeah, I've seen self-release, I've been on majors, I've been on independents, and the world change with streaming and the internet and everything. So yeah, a whole.
What did you learn from that period with the major record label? What did you get out of that in terms of not necessarily did you get out of it in terms of sales or marketing or whatever, but what did you learn from that period of being on a major record label?
Well, I learned that I was lucky enough to get a major label deal early on in my career, which gave me a foundation to be independent afterwards. And it was a really weird time for me because at that time in my career I was like really had stage fright, I had imposter syndrome. I just kept thinking someone would tap me on the shoulder and tell me that I didn't have the qualifications to be doing what I was doing. And I think when you're at a kind of peak of your career, you don't know that as an artist. So you sort of think that that's the starting blocks and that it will go on. And I've been gracefully sliding in my decline ever since.
Oh, shush. I remember, do you know Martin Joseph, the singer-songwriter? Yeah. I remember him telling me once about when he got signed to Sony, I think it was, wasn't it, that he signed to. And that was his period on a major record label. They obviously wanted him to be something he wasn't. To start, I think they made him wear blusher. And I think they wanted him to be kind of a sort of singer-songwriter, but poppy poster boy as well. And it didn't kind of tally. Did when you were at a major record label? We obviously don't want to say anything bad about them, but were you asked to do anything that you didn't want to do, or were you was it intimated that you should be something that you weren't?
Well, it was a little bit different for me because I did a licensing deal from my label
Right.
to the major label deal, and part of that was that I would deliver an album, so I had 100% creative control on the album. But then they would do like radio edits of the singles and do lots of poppy whooshes and things like that. They signed me after they signed David Gray, and they thought that I was going to be that next, the female version of him, really, you know, having a career and then taking off with them. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm really lucky because I successfully failed enough to carry on doing what I was doing, but succeeded enough to be able to carry on my own after. But yeah, it was weird. I mean, like, thinking back at the time, I mean, Jasmine Hoop, the first single that they put out, I think they spent something like 150 grand on the video, and they had a train and the crane, and we were in Prague, and you know, I think now about the records that I make for like 5 or 10, 15 grand, and how much I could do creatively with that money from one single. And it was
So
also,
did you have some moments where you were like, what on earth am I doing here?
all the time. I mean, I would go to the offices in London, and I'd tell the receptionist I was there, and then I'd be sat there I remember once I sat in the reception for like an hour and she hadn't told anyone I was there, and the MD, who is the one that signed me to East West Records, came downstairs and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I thought they'd told you I was here." So it was very corporate, and I kind of always felt that they could be selling anything, and that's a really different sort of psyche to independent labels where people are there because they love the music.
Yeah. Now listen, I've got to stop for 1 minute just to point out the drawing on the wall behind you, because that's fantastic. Who did that?
I did an art degree before I went into music, and actually what's really weird now is I get loads of commissions, so I paint a lot. I paint for people, and yeah, I've just done a couple of paintings for Ed Harcourt, who produced the last album.
Talking of the last album, there it is. For anyone that hasn't seen it, what happened there? You were out in the shower. I mean, this is what happens to me when I walk over the road to Tesco's.
That is actually when I was recording the record. I had a shower, and that's a selfie I took in Ed's bathroom when I'd just got out the bath. And then I thought, oh, fuck it, that'll do.
I love that. Actually, I was reading a very similar story from Anne-Marie. I don't know whether you know Anne-Marie, the pop princess, but I was reading a very similar story from her yesterday about the fact that, and actually, she was talking about the fact that the first couple of albums, everybody was trying to get her to look very perfect. And, you know, there was even focus on what colour her nails were and how good they were in the photos or whatever. And there's a photo of her latest album, which actually we've probably got it around here somewhere. Hold on, folks. There we are. So that you can look at the similarities. Look, there we go. It was her pushed up against her shower door, and she just wanted to say, "This is me" on this album. There was an element of, you know, saying something in particular with having the hair in the bedraggled state.
Yeah, well, I don't know. When I was on the majors, it was quite hilarious because they had like loads of stylists, and the stylists would take me to shops and bring like, you know, rails and rails of clothes. And they soon realised that anything that they put on me, within 15 minutes, it looked like I'd shopped in a charity shop, and they could just leave me to just buy.
So why not just let you shop in the charity shop?
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite places to buy clothes, actually, is a charity shop, and why not? You said about earlier, and it was a joke. It was tongue in cheek. You said about a slow decline, but actually, this is probably the best album you've ever made, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Me too.
Because you experiment with your sound so much more on this album than you've done before. What was it? Something about working with Ed that inspired that, or just were you at the right point in your career that you just wanted to sonically open up a lot more?
Well, the last release I had before that was the anthology box set, and it was it had a book of lyrics and like another book in it, and 20 CDs. There was 10 albums and then 10 bonus albums, and it felt like that was.
It's doing very well on eBay, by the way, at the moment.
It's actually it's really hard to get now. There's been
Isn't it?
Yeah, because
some people are selling it for a fortune on eBay. So.
Yeah, well, there's only a finite amount of them. So, but yeah, so it felt like I wanted to come back after that sort of collection, you know, and just really go for it. Ed is a massive part of how the sound is. He's a genius. I worked with him on the album Hypoxia a few years back, and that was much more sort of claustrophobic, and it had some weird elements, but it was much more small. This is like widescreen. It's got strings and like loops and samples, and yeah, I just always I do have like arguments with the label and people, because they say, you know, you just get people interested in the sound that you're doing, and then you change. So I've done albums of like I did a jazz album with a vibraphone player. I've done a kids punk album. You know, it's strange because if people don't hear my music, they hear my name and they think folk. And the folk world don't really think I'm folk, and the pop world think I'm folk. So I kind of fall down the back of the sofa with, you know, all those fluffy bits and pennies.
Yeah. Isn't it a bit old-fashioned for a label to think like that these days? I mean, it you know,
I don't know.
So many. I don't know. The thing is, so many of the young artists that I'm talking to are coming up through the ranks at the moment, you know, are saying to me they want to specifically, right from the word go, they want to label themselves as not gender fluid, genre fluid, and that they do not want to be defined in any particular genre of music, and to that end, they will try and make every single song seem different, etc. If that's what they want to do. I just wonder whether it's, you know, harking back to a different time when actually we needed to put everything into a category in order to actually talk about it.
Well, I think there's two prongs to that question for answers. I think one of the answers is there's with streaming and the way everything is genred. I think people are doing the opposite of what you're saying. I think people feel that they need to be classified because
although nobody ever goes in the right genre.
No, but the playlist sort of society and like identity of artists is all tied into streaming and the genre. So I think that's a difficult thing. Like, where do you fit within that sort of category world? Because it's so kind of it's like little digital letterboxes of where people are placed, and that's how you find other people. You know, if you like this artist, you might like this artist, and you don't have the natural thing of going to a record shop and just flicking through records and picking something up on a whim, not knowing what it is. Generally, everyone can hear something and make their decision from one song. But the other prong that I was thinking about is I think a lot of people are so fixated on the product that they're bypassing the magic of the creative process. And I think that if you're starting to write a song, you need to be led by the song, and you are often surprised at what that turns out to be. And if you're trying to constrict or confine what a song is before the process or during the process, then it's not letting the song breathe and be what it wants to be. And I tend to now just enjoy and focus on the act of creation and the creative process, so that, you know, I get a nice surprise at the end as well with the song. You know, it's like having a child. You know, you can be pregnant and think that your baby's going to be, you know, amazing and beautiful and do all that stuff, but they are who they are. You know, you're just they're not you, they're what you make.
Oh, tell me about it. I've got 5 children, and you when you have that many children, you realize that actually you just do not understand the DNA connection to how they then turn up. You bring them all up in effect in the same way, but they all have so different quirks. They all have so different personalities. You try and rationalize it, and you go, well, as people do with music, really, they try and go, well, maybe it's that box, and you try and say, well, maybe that's from grandma, maybe that's from maybe it's from here, but actually you can't do it, because and that's where musicians come from. If they're open, is that they will, you know, you'll absorb so much music as a listener as well. It will come from here, it will come from there, it will come from having this life experience or whatever. You can't really tell exactly where it's come from in the end, because it's come from such a mishmash of places.
Yeah. And the song itself, I do a lot of co-writing and writing with other artists around the world, and like it's a learning. Well, every day's a school day, really, because if I'm writing with an artist, it's not going to be the same as writing with another artist or with myself. So it's just being open enough and like keeping your ego in check enough to know what you don't know and be excited and go with someone's idea and see where it takes you, and keep an eye on the sort of the little things that you have, the instincts that you have from writing for like 20 odd years and tweaking. But I mean, it's so psychologically and emotionally fulfilling when you're trying to get out something from an artist, and you're taking, like, every time I sit down to write a song, I'm never going to write a song again, I don't know what I'm doing. But I think that that's a really good place to come from.
Yeah, I think most people that are in a creative profession, doesn't matter whether it's music or whether it's, you know, writing or you know, even creating stuff online, have some form of, I don't know whether I like the word imposter syndrome, but some kind of confidence of crisis on a regular basis, because, you know, the thing is that and that's good in a way, isn't it? Because it's how you deal with that. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and over the years, it's not, you know, it's not become like a self-depreciating thing anymore. It's just that I don't really trust anyone who has absolute assuredness of what they think. Like, I think doubt is a really healthy thing, and questioning is a really healthy thing, and being aware that you can't know everything in one lifetime.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. It sickens me a little bit sometimes online, where people are like, it's all about mindset. You can know, you know, as long as you follow this, you'll be, you know, strength of will means that you think, well, actually, look, you know, over the years, how do we progress, if we progress at all as humans, is by questioning, and by having conversation, and by listening. and realizing that we're not necessarily, our viewpoint isn't necessarily right. And every single day, I have another conversation with someone where I say, well, have we actually considered how the other person feels? Have we had a conversation where we're actually thinking about how this impacts them? And it's like, oh, no.
Well, also, create the creative arts aren't the same as sport. You know, it's not a competitive it's not a competitive world. Well, I mean, people put you up to be competitive, and I remember early on the conversations with people who would be like, oh, you could be the next Beth Orton, or you could be the next Alanis Morissette. And I was like, at the time, thinking, oh, right, so there's room for one, and you have to knock the other one off the top of the podium in order
Can't
to
I be the next Kathryn Williams, please? Yeah.
Well, more than that, that it was a competition. And now I have so many friends in music who we support each other, and it's not a race. We each have something. I think there's a problem with trying to think that there has to be a winner.
Yeah, massively. In fact, I'm going to introduce you to another one of those people. I'm going to give you a new friend before I say goodbye to you today. We'll do it off air. But I interviewed someone the other day, and I know that you'll love her to death, because she's wanting to perhaps get into the songwriting workshop type space as well. And she has a lovely abode in Devon, in the middle of a woods, which is owned by her mum, in a cabin, which is where she lives, with lots of space for songwriters. And I said, we'll probably introduce you, because I know people like Polly and Hannah would love that as well. And you could probably all go and make lovely music together there, because it just looked wonderful. I saw you online from Purbeck the other day. I mean, how was that?
It was amazing. I did 2 shows. I did one songwriter circle with Romeo Stodart and Michelle Stodart, where we talked about the creative process, and we each did a song, and we did some songs together because I've written with both of them. And then I did my band show, which was like the full band doing the songs from Night Drives, and it was quite overwhelming because there was a lot of people when we were sound checking, and then it just was more and more and more, and people were really into it, and we got like a standing ovation at the end, so that felt good.
That is good. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that this is One Little Indian, because there was one track on there where I felt you were actually channeling your own Björk, and you would certainly are playing a lot more with your voice. Was that something you've wanted to do for a while? Is play around with your voice? And I was going to ask you, actually, because the first time I heard one of your records back in 2002, I think it was, what struck me was, wow, this voice is really interesting, because you've got quite a quiet voice in a way. You've got quite a soft voice, and yet, dare I say it, that a lot of people that have had a softer, quieter voice like you will then have sort of gilded it with, the lily underneath, and made everything so soft and saccharine underneath that actually it just becomes like a mushy mess. But you've always put something underneath your voice that's made your voice more interesting.
Yeah,
in a great way. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying by that?
I think stop digging.
No, I mean, it's good.
So what's the question?
On this album, have you deliberately tried to extend your voice and try different things with your voice? Because I feel that you have. And B, in terms of your own voice, which is a beautiful voice, have you over the years deliberately tried to create kind of a juxtaposition, and sometimes with the music and the voice? Because I think you've done that incredibly well. I think you've played to your strengths.
Yeah, well, I'm not really that interested in the saccharine kind of thing. And I was managed by Alan McGee for like 8 years, and he was always saying, "Right, Kathryn, you're not folk. I would say like you're Nirvana unplugged." And he would, and I really liked that about him, that like he could see that just because my voice was sort of quiet didn't mean that I didn't have a punk heart. And I think that I'm really interested in just delivering the songs that come out and making sure that the lyrics are delivered in a way that paint a picture in someone's mind. That's my aim.
Yeah, it works. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yay.
You know, yeah. I think everybody, as a singer, everybody has moments where they perhaps think, "Oh, I wish my voice was like that." You know, I wish I could do this with my voice. Have you had those moments over the years? Have you ever looked and thought, "Oh, I know, I wish, you know, I could perhaps do that with my voice as well, so that I could do this with it"?
No, I think it's too late to. It's too late to be anyone else. Like, I often feel like that if I've been booked for a gig and I'm not sure if it's like the right booking for a gig, and just before I go on stage, I say to myself, "Too late to be anyone else. I've just got to be me."
Yeah. What was the worst situation you ever had gig wise like that? I mean, I can recall that for myself. We were booked at live City Hall, if you've ever been there and played there. It holds quite a few people. And we were headlining what was effectively a punk parade. And we weren't. We were kind of jingly jangly indie pop. And it was a complete disaster. And I did want to get out of there.
I can recall two. One was being booked for a very sort of traditional folk festival, and we got up with the full band, and there was people putting their hands over their ears and shaking their heads at me while I was singing. That was hard.
Really?
And then, yeah. Ooh. And then another one, which was kind of hilarious, was my agent booked me for the Eden Project, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm playing the Eden Project. Like, you know, PJ Harvey's done that, like Radiohead have done that. This is amazing."
Peter Gabriel. Yeah.
And so I got there, and at the time I was promoting the Hypoxia album, which was inspired and a commission to write an album to commemorate Sylvia Plath, and it was written all around her novel The Bell Jar, so it was quite dark.
That is dark. Yeah,
and we got there, and we got to the Eden Project, and he'd booked me on to a Cornish pasty festival. So, and everyone else who was on the bill were Cornish, and then there was just like loads of hay bales out and loads of kids running around hay bales, and there was me and the band playing like songs about Sylvia Plath at a pasty festival. So that's probably the weirdest one. Yeah.
Oh, I love stories like that. You just think, yeah, on occasions like that, I think you can only just close your eyes and be in the moment for yourself.
Yeah.
On occasions like that, there's nothing else for it.
I think Caitlin Moran said that in those situations you just have to say, "This is going to be a good anecdote one day," and that's like how you.
And
have
it
to
just
cope
was.
With it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic! What I got to ask? I mean, you said very briefly what it was like. You know, that it's been fantastic working with Ed. What he seems to be very busy at the moment. He seems to be wanting to play on everybody's album or helping write everybody's album. Do you feel that, if we can just talk for a minute about him, do you feel like he's at a point in his career where he needs to do that? You know, just from working with him, do you feel like he's I don't know. Is he having a special moment in his life where, you know, this is what he needs to do?
Well, Ed is one of the most talented, multi-talented people I know. I don't sort of ever usually say the genius word, but I mean, I've known him a long time. I've written with him, and I've had him produce my records. He's got his own studio now, where at the back of where he lives, so he can do a lot more producing. He does more production. He works with like some really big names, but he can engineer, he can produce, he can write. I mean, the string arrangements on the new album, he sat and hand wrote them on the kitchen table. He's the best piano player I've ever met. He can play drums, he can play bass, he can play guitar, he can play synth, he can play trumpet, trombone. I mean, he is just... You would cut him open and you would see minor seventh chords. And on top of that, he's a champion, and he's a really good friend. And there's been times when I've been low and he has, you know, called me up, and vice versa. And we've just supported each other. Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about Ed. And I think his instrumental albums, Monochrome to Colour especially, are just... They're like amazing symphonic records that, you know, and he does film soundtracks. And yeah, I mean, he's really hard to get a hold of to work with, because he's so good. And I'm just lucky enough that I'm a friend, so he fits me in.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's a special thing. Ed, if you're listening at all at any stage, you know, I hope you've been touched. I'm sure you will have been by that. What comes next for Kathryn Williams? I mean, after this, which is fantastic, I have to say, absolutely love that album. What comes next? Where do you... Have you started writing again? Have you put pen to paper at all?
So I've just got the masters back from Abbey Road on a project I've been doing called Oystein Williams, which is with this guy Dan Wilson from the band Withered Hand.
Oh,
and
yes.
that's going to come out on One Little Indie next year. And
because he's just released this year his first major album for about 10 years, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. I'm a massive fan of his writing, so yeah, we've written the whole album together and we perform it all together, and we had an amazing band. We had like Chris Difford, Chris Geddes from Bell and Sebastian, we had Louis Abbott from Admiral Fallow, we had Graham Smiley from what are they called, that really cool band, Arab Strap. So we've that was amazing. We made that up in Leith in Edinburgh, and I'm going into the studio for my solo record with a producer called Leo Abrahams, who's amazing. And actually he started out working with Ed Harcourt, so there's like nice connections there. So I've got those two albums, and then I've got an album that's nearly finished with Michelle Stodart. And yeah, I think that's it at the moment, music wise.
And you're doing some shows with Polly as well?
Oh yeah, so a month-long tour, September through and October, with my dear friend Polly Paulsma, and that's going to be really nice because it'll be like two gigs for the price of one. We're each going to do a solo set, and then come back on together and play some songs together. And I just love Polly. We've written together quite a bit, and yeah, that's what I mean about the support thing in music. Like I can name 10 people off the top of my head in music who are doing the same job as me, who support me and are there at the other end of the phone, and vice versa. And it just makes life a lot better. And so we're going to be off on the road, just the two of us in a little van.
That sounds to me as though that could be like quite two cheeky little schoolgirls, actually.
Oh, yeah. We were
you know,
saying that we're thinking it's going to be like Thelma and Louise without the cliff.
I love that. Yeah.
But yeah.
I expect to see you broadcast from the van at some point, because I know you both like to broadcast. And actually, the bits and pieces I've seen from the two of you together, you've got a lovely chemistry. I was going to ask you about that in terms of that, and thinking about what you were saying earlier about how you kind of cut across the noise, and when everything's curated into these different genres. I mean, one of the ways that people have done that is by producing other types of content which have a different metadata, so therefore people find that content first, and then they find out of that, they find people, and things like podcasts or little conversation content between musicians is one really good way of doing that. Do you ever see yourself doing something like that?
Well, I just finished the third series of my podcast, which is called Before the Light Goes Out.
Yes.
And that was put in the Times top 10 best music podcasts. And that's.
But what about you and Polly? Yeah, could you? Yeah, at some stage, maybe.
Me and Polly do a podcast.
Yeah, because I think that would be great.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, she's on she's on one of the episodes of Before the Light Goes Out. Polly and I are in talks about doing a nice project together, which isn't music but is all about music. And she had a like clever book out all about music and Angela Carter, and I had my novel that came out a couple of years ago. So yeah, and we've tutored together at Arvon, so doing songwriting.
I think collaboration in the broader sense of the word, not necessarily like, collaboration as some artists would see it in terms of like, I will do this bit on your album or whatever, but collaborating with as you say, your friends and the broader art world around you is definitely a wonderful space to be in. And you really seem to have a wonderful set of friends around you that, make your life really interesting, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. And collaboration is like a bigger and bigger thing for me. A long time ago, I would want people to know that I had written this song and written it alone. And now I'm really excited and happy to work with people and celebrate what they've brought to things.
Because that, in a way, that raises up the end result.
Yeah, it lifts everything, and you're learning from the other person.
Yeah. Well, I've learned from you today. I learned I need to be very careful with my words, just because I certainly wasn't insulting your voice. I love your voice to death.
I was just pulling your leg. I don't mind.
But I just think it's interesting to make people think about what what their voice is like, and how it for me, as I say, I think you've been one of the artists for me who's been really good at writing the right songs to go with your voice.
Oh, thanks.
But that's all right, because I think there's a lot of people that do it wrong.
Yeah.
and yeah, perhaps we'll leave it there, because we could get sued. No, it's been.
I like to be more of a champion and a cheerleader now than a critic. I leave all of that stuff to the critics and just encourage people to create.
There's enough of those, Kathryn. We don't need any more. Listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I hope people have enjoyed this conversation. And it could happen, there are people that have heard this today as it goes out, or listen to this over the next week, and you've never heard Kathryn's music before. What rock have you been under? And there goes the dog in the background. I'm sorry about that, but it's that time of the day. But please do go and check out Kathryn's music now. This is the time to do it. You've heard her speak. You know her a little bit better. If you feel like you've enjoyed her company for the last half an hour, you owe it to her, really, to go and check it out. And do pay some money, because as I say, every single one of these, Kathryn, unbelievably, the dot in the corner of the room that emits that music, it doesn't just get there for nothing. People actually have to pay money to go in studios and pay musicians and all of that sort of thing. So please do actually pay some money and go and see Kathryn on tour as well. Do you know when the first one of those is?
It's in Glasgow on the 16th of September, and then it runs all the way through to the 15th of October, and we're up and down the whole country. And we're very nice, and Polly and I both give good hugs at the merch table.
You see, that's a beautiful thing, It's the way to go. Don't hide around the back and let somebody else do the merch table. Do the merch table yourself. Actually, get to meet some people, and that's a wonderful thing. People, if you go, you can actually meet Kathryn and Polly in person and have a wonderful chat about their music. You've been an absolute star. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this, please do subscribe. It's not for me. I don't even care. It's for the people that come on. They're the important people. So it's for people like Kathryn. If you haven't enjoyed this today, then tough. You've listened to it anyway, and it's actually been an instructional video on how to buy digital first-class stamps. Until next time, thanks for watching My Music with me, Graham Cofe, and Kathryn Williams. Bye for now.